Well, hello, Mean Green fans, and welcome to Hank's Neighborhood. This is my man cave, where I have an awful lot of Mean Green historical items, none of which were ever on inventory. So don't report me to inventory surplus. Today, we're going to talk about a really special team that wore this helmet. We broke out the North Texas script. I've got a vintage hat on. I've got the gift of the 2002 New Orleans Bowl, this nice pullover. But more importantly, as we revisit the 2002 New Orleans Bowl, I have the former voice of the Mean Green and my 20-year colleague on the Mean Green Radio Network, George Dunham. George, how are you?
Hi, Hank. It's good to see your face. It's good to talk about a team that somehow played 18 years ago. I don't know where those years have gone, but it was fun to go back and watch it.
Yes, and I noticed you've gone vintage on me today as well. Could you tell us a little bit about your outfit?
Yes, this is the windbreaker that Daryl Dickey and his staff are nice enough to share with lowly radio guys like myself. And yes, has the New Orleans Bowl emblem on the back. And when he would pass this out routinely year after year, 4 straight New Orleans Bowls appearances, he would clear his throat and then say, "You're welcome."
So before we get rolling on our task at hand here, just give us some thoughts on how life is at the Dunham household and how your family's holding up and kind of how your days go when you're not broadcasting on the ticket.
Yeah, it's different for sure. We're sheltering in place along with the rest of this country right now. We have a youngster. I have 3 boys, and my youngest is a student at Oklahoma State. He's back from Stillwater, taking a lot of classes online. Either he's had a lot of lectures and group discussions about what's going on in class, or they're playing a lot of Xbox. I can't figure out which one, but it's good to have him back in these terrible circumstances. And working at the ticket is different right now. Many of the guys are broadcasting in a way similar to this from their living rooms until we get the all clear to go back. And the morning show, we have, I guess, kind of a neutral site we go to that just the 3 of us go to. We call it the Muser's Bunker, and Gordon and Craig and myself do the show from there. And it's much safer than going to the ticket studio, sharing common surfaces, sharing microphones. We're socially and physically distancing from each other. We're 15 feet apart and yet still in the same room. And we're taking all the precautions, and I hope everybody does out there and stays at home as long as they can until we're given the all clear again.
Yeah, I've got 2 boys attending the University of North Texas now, both taking online courses. I'm pretty sure my freshman is majoring in Fortnite because that tends to eat up most of the available Wi-Fi, which is why I'm out here and they're all in there. But no, you guys are doing the right thing. And I know I speak for everyone in the Metroplex that is now really leaning on radio probably harder than they have in a long time. You guys are doing a great service because you're not only keeping us up to date on what's going on, but you're giving that needed diversion, which is really what the ticket has always done. Whether it was 9/11 or what we're going through now, when you guys have to shift gears, you do an amazing job of kind of just letting everybody feel a little bit more at ease about things for a few hours in the morning. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, that's nice of you to say. I hope we are. There's no template for this. We're just trying to go through each day, just like anyone who's in their job trying to do the best they can from home or another location. And yeah, it's definitely strange, but we're trying to be a diversion. We're trying to talk about other things sometimes to get your mind off of it, but at the same time to be as informative as possible, because this is a really serious situation. I think radio does play an important role right now. What is going on? What should I do as a Denton County resident or Dallas County, wherever we are? And yeah, thanks for saying that. I hope we're doing okay at it.
Just before we jump into looking at the tape, your thoughts on that non-conference, because we talk a lot about non-conference scheduling that year. If you'll recall, North Texas could have beaten TCU, could have beaten South Florida, and in my mind, beat Arizona.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Patrick Cobbs was past the goal line. I think on a 4th down call at the goal line, it sure looked like from the replays we saw and from the booth that he had broken the plane, and very easily could have beaten TCU. very back and forth game that I believe a guy by the name of Hiram Gonzalez threw a touchdown pass that brought North Texas within 2 in the final minute of that game. But this was a team that, they thought they were going to have Scott Hall the entire season at quarterback, but it was evident he had a shoulder problem in the opener against Texas. And then here comes a freshman, Andrew Smith, who had great ability, but just didn't have the experience. And week by week, he got better. And by week 2 or 3 of conference play, he really started to play with a confidence. Plus, he knew a defense always had his back. It was a nationally ranked defense. And then I know that 2013 defense was really special, but that 2002 defense, man, they were tough. And it didn't matter who the opponent was. It was tough to run against them. And it was certainly tough to block the nose tackle, Brandon Kennedy.
Going back and looking, I remembered it was a top 10 defense. It actually finished the year number 3 in total defense. And that's against a non-conference that, like we just mentioned, featured some really good teams. And before we jump into the highlights, I've got a little artifact I'd like to show you real quick, just to get your thoughts, because this is how the season started. Hold on a second here.
Okay.
In the man cave.
All right. This is Hank's man cave that's has so many great.
Yeah. And again, nothing I have here was stolen. This is all donated by different curators through the year. If I hold that up, what's that make you think of?
One of 11 sacks, I believe, that North Texas had against Texas that night. That's Brandon Kennedy about to swallow up Chris Sims, and that was remarkable. That team was trying to get its footing offensively, but Texas, I don't think, scored in the second half, and they really wanted to, put it on North Texas in the third and fourth quarter, but they couldn't block 92. And the Daryl Dickey quote again comes to mind of, how do you stop Brandon Kennedy? You can hold him or tackle him or double team him. None of it seems to work, including against Texas.
No, and I remember back in the day, it would always be you, me, Stephen Bartolotta, who we still affectionately refer to as Poppy for some strange reason, and Chris Wiley, our stats guy. And we rode the elevator down from Darrell K. Royal Memorial saying, you know what, if nothing else, our defense is going to be pretty good this year. And as it turns out, we rode them all the way to the New Orleans Bowl. So let's jump into some highlights. What do you think?
Let's do it.
This game starts off in raucous fashion. An onside kick.
Now, I like the attitude there, but I also like if it doesn't work, we got this defense. And there you see Brandon Kennedy. Look how fired up he is. This is the first play from scrimmage, and he starts roughhousing with his own defense. He was so fired up to play that night.
Yeah, and he gets double teamed all night, but that allows guys like Chris McIver and Darrell Daniels, 2 very good players, to have a say. Gino Gaduli goes to the air early, and Neon Don McGee comes up with the pick, but that's not what I remember this play for, and I think you probably remember it for the same thing, our crowd mic and where it was located.
It was so loud there in the Superdome. All the North Texas fans were right below us. But right next to us was the North Texas coaching staff, including Gary DeLoach. He used some really colorful language on the pass rush and then the play. I think he was really mad because Don McGee took it out of the end zone. And then if you see on that replay, does he not fake a pass at the 10-yard line as he's bringing it out? And as you made the point, that language wouldn't play very well on then our Dallas station, The Word, a religious station out of Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yep, your Christian source for Mean Green Athletics. Gary almost ruined the broadcast early on, but defense makes a play early, and interceptions ended up being a big part of the day. So then you see Cincinnati trying to get after it in the run game, and McCleskey, their running back, had gone for over 1,300 yards. So, I mean, stopping this cat was not going to be easy.
Yeah, I think I remember going into the game, we felt like Cincinnati had scored a lot of points. Gaduli had big numbers. They too had a really good season against some good competition. And I remember going into it, I thought, boy, North Texas will have to play well to win this game, because I remember the respect. Their record wasn't as good maybe as they had hoped early in the season, but this is a really good Cincinnati team. I remember they had some really good athletes on defense too.
You look at this Mean Green defense, and I know we've had some outstanding linebackers in recent vintage. Zach Orr, certainly a guy you talk about. A lot of guys recently that have been good. But the trio of linebackers on this particular Mean Green team, Chris Hurd, Taylor Casey, and then in the middle, Cody Spencer. I'm not sure North Texas has ever had three that were so good at their individual roles at the same time.
And you remember, we wondered how they would be without Brad Castle, who went to the NFL after 2001. Chris Hurd stepped right in there and played really well, and Cody moved to the middle. And I think he had a elbow injury early, maybe in the season, or I may be thinking of another year. That may have been the next year.
I think it was the Alabama game early on where he had a dislocated elbow, and I made the mistake of asking him on the tarmac if it hurt. And he basically, in colorful language, said that may be the dumbest effing question anyone's ever asked me. So, again, apologies for that.
Yeah, they Cody Spencer out of Grapevine, Texas. They were really the defensive line was so good with Brandon, but that linebacker crew, they really helped define it too, because they played the run so well, and they could cover too. And you can see in this game they get into the interception party.
But Gaduli was a good quarterback, and he starts finding some guys. They had some long receivers, and on this drive, they actually get after it and get into the end zone. A nice recovery by Cincinnati, which kind of signaled, okay, it's not going to be easy to shut this team down.
No, they had good field position again. That was the thing I forgot. The first two possessions, I think, of the game, Cincinnati's right there at midfield, and that's certainly not what the type of start that North Texas wanted to get off to. And I think maybe that's why they tried that onside kick, maybe to steal a possession away from that offense.
Gaduli would be in this kind of a situation pretty much all day.
Yeah, that guy, 92, Brandon Kennedy, Terrell, Texas, 5'10", maybe 300-something pounds. I think this was Brandon at his best. I think this was his best year. I know he put up good numbers, I believe, that next season too, but 2002, you could not block him. Texas, it didn't matter who we were playing. Nobody could block him. He had such a low center of gravity. They had such a tough time with him.
And he certainly helped the ball hawking secondary come up with plays like that. That was Markeith Knowlton. That's with that pick. And that's a name that sometimes gets forgotten. Markeith Knowlton went on to play a long time in the Canadian Football League. He's another one of those really good players that came out of the Darrell Dickey era that we probably should celebrate a little bit more.
Absolutely. I think he was out of the Houston area, wasn't he? One of those players from the Houston area, and terrific athlete. And I remember he was a really good get for North Texas. There were some Big 12 teams that were after him, but North Texas with Bruce Bell and a few others had that pipeline to that Houston area, and they got Markeith and a few others. I believe Walter Priestley right next to him there is a Houston kid as well. And yeah, that's secondary. We've already seen a couple of hard hits in this thing. Those guys really brought it from the safety and corner position.
Yeah, again, as salty a defense from top to bottom as North Texas has had. Here's Andrew Smith, and he starts to show, like you said early on, that he's growing up on the job. And the receivers didn't get a lot of attention back then, but Kevin Howard, George Marshall, these are guys that really had good, solid careers for North Texas.
They did. There was a lot of speed on the field, and on the outside with Branch and Marshall, Howard. We'll see a little bit of Andy Blunt too as a blocker, as a tight end and a receiver. And by the time North Texas got to December, Andrew Smith looked like a totally different quarterback. He wasn't a freshman anymore. He'd really picked up the offense. You saw him roll out there, and then finally North Texas got on the board, and this is where they started going.
As old do. Yeah, I'm going to have to stick up for my tight ends. You mentioned Blunt as a blocking tight end. I'm going to tell you, Randy Gardner was the blocking tight end, and Blunt was the pretty boy. Just get me the pass.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Blunt was more of the pass receiver for sure.
Yeah.
I think he used to take some grief for his blocking sometimes, but he was on the field a lot. And boy, he was a great weapon too, just going right down the seam because you worried about that ground game. And I think so many times teams would edge their safeties up, expecting run, the play action, and there's Blunt for a big play.
Back to the action here with our man Gino Gaduli slinging it around. And he's in trouble again.
Oh my, a lot of green out there in front of him. And I was interested to see that was the first time. Now, would replay show that this is an interception? I don't know. It was close. That we didn't have replay in college football then, though, did we?
No, and you and I didn't have a replay monitor in the booth, so all we did was gush about what an athletic play that was by Chris Hurd. But, Chris Hurd's one of my favorite players of all time because he started as that walk-on from Killeen, and Darrell Dickey didn't even know his name at the first practice, but I remember him saying on the practice field, number 15, if you keep hitting like that, you're going to get a scholarship. And he not only got a scholarship, he became the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year. Chris Hurd, who's coaching now in the collegiate ranks, really, I think, epitomizes a lot of the Darrell Dickey era. A kid that wanted a chance, made the most of it, and became a huge part of the success.
Yeah, great story. As you mentioned, a walk-on, and you wouldn't know that after a couple of years of him playing linebacker. He was a pivotal part of those North Texas defenses, certainly 02 and 03.
I'd like to take this moment to remind you to wash your hands, whether you're inside or outside, or you're at George's palatial suite there, by the way. Nice room. I thought you'd be in your mean green office, but that's another nice place to hang out.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Kelly's room back here, complete with shiplap and all that stuff.
Yeah, I got some shiplap right over there. All right, back to the action. And we're going to go up top, and that's a pass that George Marshall never dropped.
Oh, and I did not make a good call. I think I said caught because I thought he had it. Looked like his hands and his shoulders moved away from the ball. But I thought this was a real key here. Even after that, they kept this drive going and ended up scoring, and that didn't go away. That score didn't go away. It just took a little bit longer.
No, and you see Galbraith hard running here, but coming up is the play that wipes off the Marshall missed catch, and it also is a foreshadowing of what would be one of the best running backs in college football within the next year. Here's Patrick Hobbs hitting the seam, and man, did we enjoy watching that cat play. I've said it probably too many times, but having him on staff now is such a joy, because he's every bit as good a person as he was a college football player. But he was a great college football player.
Look at his vision, just hitting there, and he was so much fun to watch. He had the big run the year before that clinched North Texas going to a bowl game that first year in 2001. Started to get the ball more in 2002, and then, as we know, he just took over in 2003 and led the nation and rushing. That was vintage Patrick Hobbs right there. What a beautiful run.
The running backs coach for the Mean Green during those years with Galbraith and Cobbs and then Jamario Thomas, Freddie Kitchens, who had a chance with the Browns this year. Didn't work out, probably tough timing to be with the Browns, but how about Freddie? We never would have thought back then he was going to become a National Football League head coach, but he did a great job with the running backs.
He really did. And I remember talking to Freddie quite a bit because I was always fascinated to hear what it was like to play quarterback at Alabama, because that's what he did. And doggone, was he on the field in 95 when we played Alabama? Was he the Alabama quarterback in 95?
We'll have to ask Clay Jennings, because if so, he would have sacked him about 5 times. I can't remember.
That may have been Coyle. That may have been before Freddie. I'm not sure, but
no, it wasn't Brody. Brody came later.
Okay, yeah, it may have been Freddie Kitchens, but yeah, he did do a nice job. Darrell had a really nice staff, and guys who bought in, like the players did, like the coaches bought into. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to play defense. We're going to run the ball, play action, hit some big plays in the passing game, and they hit it just right that year.
Darrell experienced a lot of what Seth Luttrell has gone through. You assemble a really good staff, and then you got to hold on to them. And that's what ended up happening to Darrell was the attrition of a lot of really good guys. I mean, you had Eric Russell was fantastic on special teams, still one of my favorite guys I ever worked with. Spencer Leftwich, a fantastic offensive line coach, and then Eric Walford came in after him. You had Mike Bugar on defense. You had Kenny Evans on offense. You had the aforementioned Gary DeLoach. I mean, Bruce Bell. That top to bottom, hard to beat or compare that staff. You got to go back to some Otis Mitchell staffs and the current staff that we have now to be able to say top to bottom, really good guys.
After back-to-back really incredible seasons, this one, then the next year, North Texas beat Baylor, won 9 games and went back to New Orleans before losing to Memphis. That's when the staff really started to get picked apart. Remember, that's when DeLoach went to UCLA.
Right.
And Spencer Leftwich got several opportunities and was in college football for a decade and a half after that. That was a really nice staff, and you got to have that. You've got to have really good coaches on both sides of the ball, and they did. And I don't know, those players seem to relate to him too. It was just, that's always the question, isn't it? Do you win because you have chemistry, or do you have chemistry because you win? I don't know. That group went together well, the coaches, the players, and I think that's why they won.
Here you see one of my favorite Mean Greeners from the past, Jeremy Pearl. What's your favorite Jeremy Pearl recollection?
I think we're about to see it. I think this was the play that I always remember him for, because this really put North Texas in a position. There's pressure, and there he goes down the sideline, a pick six. And I think at that point, Cincinnati's down 10, and they knew they had problems. They knew they couldn't keep pressure off Gaduli, and I think they were, I don't know, maybe a little confused by some of the looks that Gary DeLoach was throwing at him in coverage. And didn't he come to North Texas originally as a quarterback, Jeremy Pearl?
His dad had played with Darrell at Kansas State, so he was a Missouri kid, which we didn't go after a lot of Missouri kids, obviously, but there was a connection. But yeah, that pick six is memorable because it came in the bowl game. But I was thinking of pick six at historic Fouts Field against Arkansas State, where he dropped the bomb.
Yes, he scored and then took the ball, threw it up in the air, and as it dropped, the entire defense fell back with him. And I don't think Fouts Field in its glorious history ever saw more yellow penalty flags than it did after that. 30 yards worth, I do believe,
I think we
ensuing kick.
Kicked off from like the 5-yard line. Anyway, Jeremy Pearl with another pick, and this one goes into the end zone. So right now you're feeling pretty good. North Texas defense is having its way, and now you can settle into that old-fashioned run game if you want.
Yeah, I think right now North Texas has started to feel that confidence again. This is what they were doing to Sunbelt teams. They would clobber you on defense, then turn in a couple of big plays like this one. And then the next thing you knew, you were in big, big trouble. There's Galbraith. And how about the blocking downfield? Their ground game was a thing of beauty. It really was. I know it wasn't always a lot of fun when you would run it on 3rd and 8 and didn't make it. But, man, by the end of the year, they got so good and so efficient running the football.
It was the first bowl win in 46 years. And the next time that North Texas would win a bowl game was 2013. And whether it's just a weird configuration or not, both times it was run-based teams with play-action football. Seth Luttrell is going to get his with the spread offense at some point because he's just got too good a program rolling right now. But it is interesting. Both those teams were able to eat up clock when they needed to. And so if you could get in a position to dominate the line of scrimmage, this was a team that could do that. And I always enjoyed that. I like going into the fourth quarter knowing if we just had a one-possession lead, we could play keep away from you.
Yeah, and the game's so much different now. It's so spread. The rules have changed a little bit. But back then, boy, it was line up, run the football, and we'll see a few more running plays throughout this game. If you watch in particular, we talk so much about the running backs. That offensive line was really, really good. They weren't all huge. Pretty good size, 285 to 300 pounds, but a lot of those guys were overlooked because they, maybe weren't as big as some guys who went on to play in the Big 12. And Andy Brewster at center. Now, he was undersized, but boy, he was such a good blocker and took on big physical defensive linemen all year long and won most of those battles.
At number 57 was just downright mean. And the thing about him was he came along at a time where the offense was built for him to be the center. Here's another pick. This is Cody. He's going to run it out of bounds. He's going to get roughed up. But you know what? That's exactly what he wanted, was to go ahead and get that penalty, right?
Yeah. He wouldn't. He was not going to take a knee or slide or sidestep out of bounds. I think he was ready to take on that whole Cincinnati sideline. He was such a tough player, and really athletic too. All those linebackers made a lot of really good plays in the open field. Taylor Casey during the year made several plays on the ball in the passing game, and I just remember Cody Spencer just like that, taking those deep drops, recognizing where the ball was going, and then making a really good play on it.
He ate a lot of potassium, big banana guy.
Yes, he did enjoy bananas, and sometimes even and wondered if others around him should enjoy bananas.
But we digress. There's Craig Jones, a big hitter from that backfield. And again, I think the most fun I've had going back and watching this 3 or 4 times is A, listening to your call because it was so good. But B, just this defense, man, you forget it's just up and down every position, guys that could make plays. And we've already talked about Chris Hurd, but there's number 17 coming around again.
Man, it was so fun to go back, watch it, and listen. You could hear the excitement in our voices, because I think we were so excited for this team. We were there the year before, just glad to be there. This team, we really wanted it for them. They're on national TV against a Conference USA team. Could North Texas someday maybe move up to Conference USA? This was a big game for the program. It's a big game for the school, and I don't know, maybe it's because we're 18 years younger or something, but I really liked the edge in our voice that night, that we were really having a good time, and you couldn't help but have a good time watching this team play.
This was obviously pre-Katrina, so we were actually in the Saints radio booth, which was a lot closer to the field. You and I have been back there since, and now the press is way up high in the Superdome. But it was a different day in New Orleans. It was a lot of fun, and Bourbon Street was it's like we used to say, it was like a Denton Chamber of Commerce mixer all through Bourbon Street. You saw everyone you knew from Denton, Texas, and we traveled well as a university back then.
We really did, and it was so much fun. And I think that's why you and I and everyone else who was down there, I think we shared in the heartbreak of Katrina, just seeing what happened to that city afterwards. They've come back, but maybe not all the way to where they were in the early aughts. And now with what we're going through right now, I have a niece who works she's going through medical school right now, doing her clinicals. She's still in New Orleans with what they're dealing with right now, and it's terrible. But it was a lot of fun those 4 straight years at the New Orleans Bowl.
Let's talk a little bit more about this quarterback, because coming off the Mason Fine 4 years, the current group of fans don't understand that had Andrew Smith been able to continue his career, and he was robbed from us way too early in a tragic car accident, but he was going to be a dual threat, difference-making quarterback. And really, after that loss, North Texas kind of struggled to find the right fit for a long time at quarterback.
They did. He played a little bit that next year. Scott Hall won the job when conference play started, and then Andrew was his backup again. And then that next year was going to be really his year. If not just backing up, and maybe they're going to have dual quarterbacks, and then that's when the tragic car accident happened, and it could have changed everything, certainly for the Smith family, first and foremost. But yeah, he was a really good quarterback that was just getting started, and you wonder what could have been. Who knows? Maybe Daryl Dickey would have stayed a couple more years. They may have won a few more Sun Belt titles with Andrew Smith at the controls.
Here, however, is a play that I don't think Patrick Hobbs is going to be real fond of revisiting. You saw his touchdown run
Blow
this
the
year.
whistle. Wait, you're not going to
Yeah,
blow the whistle there? That's forward progress was stopped, wasn't it?
tell you what, though, if you can strip the ball from Patrick Hobbs, you're pretty strong because you got a
Yeah.
power lifter with both arms around the ball here, and he just didn't fumble much. This is a good play defensively. Whether or not they should have blown the whistle, we can argue that. But
Yeah.
Cincinnati makes a defensive play that gets them squarely back in the game.
It almost looked like an offensive. Was that J.R. Randall that went flying in there? It looked like that may have helped cause the fumble too. And that was kind of a halting moment because North Texas is in total control of this game. And then that happened. And now all of a sudden they're going for two to make it a 3-point game. But it wasn't to be. That was a significant play. That really changed the tone of the game, a game that really North Texas was dominating at that point.
But you knew you were going to get the best shot from Cincinnati. And so down the stretch, we come in a game where North Texas now has to do what they've done all year, grind it out. And I know Coach Lepwich had a lot of different phrases to find this part of the game, but we'll leave those alone for right now. The bottom line is here's your quarterback growing up, finding the angle and getting just to that first down yardage. I think this shows exactly how far he had come in the course of the year.
Watch this block coming up here too. Oh my God. Was that Galbraith? I'm not sure who that was, but man, everybody blocked. If you played running back, obviously the offensive line did a great job of it. Receivers, we saw that George Marshall block earlier on the touchdown run.
Let me go back into the coffers here for a second. Hold on.
Uh-oh. We have another treat here from 2002.
The guy that made plays down the stretch was this guy, Michael Hickman. I want to talk about Hickman, the converted running back. Here he is beating New Mexico State in the game that would go ahead and guarantee that we were going to that 2002 New Orleans Bowl. But he's another one of those kind of guys that doesn't get talked about enough. Everybody knew their role on that team, and I think that's one of those things you learn in athletics is when you've got a team where you're not having to just mandate the locker room and kids are doing that on their own, then coaches can coach and wins come. And we've seen that in the Seth Luttrell era. We saw it with Dan McCarney's 2013 team with that fantastic senior class. And you saw it a lot during this 4-year run.
I'm so glad you brought up the New Mexico State game. We've kind of glossed over that as a part of this 2002 team. That was a winner-take-all game at the end of the season at Fouts Field. The winner goes to the New Orleans Bowl. The loser of that game, given the bowl alignments, it was over for that team. Whoever lost was going to not only lose the conference, they were going to lose the chance to go to the postseason. Michael Hickman wore out New Mexico State, and that was, there were so many big plays going to the fullback. You look at that sideline just going crazy. And remember how loud Fouts was that day? That was a great crowd that was there in New Mexico State. Brought a lot of people because just the year before, North Texas had upset them in the final seconds when given a fumble late in the fourth quarter. In fact, all of the games at Fouts Field, that may have been one of, if not my favorite game, that New Mexico State game.
Yeah, easily mine. As we were walking in that morning, our trainer at the time, great friend of mine, Brad Anderson, said, well, the table is set. Two best teams. It's going to be a great crowd. All you got to do is sit down at the table because the table is set. And it was. And the thing I love about this picture is not only Hickman scoring his second touchdown, but just the people I see on the sidelines up close. Remember how crazy the sidelines used to get?
Oh, yeah.
I'm seeing Albert Vecha and Marshall Pridgeon without a Diet Coke can in his hand. Mike Barella, down the corridor of years. They won't forget the joys and tears, but not this guy.
That was some names there. Yeah, those are some names there. That was fun. And, we did the games together for a long time, right at 20 years. And to this day, that's what I miss the most. I miss Saturdays, just being in the booth, having that table set, getting a chance to call a game like this 2002 New Orleans Bowl. But you just miss the personalities too, the nonsense, after the games and before. But, it was like a traveling band, we all traveled together late at night, sometimes didn't get home till 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And, you spent a lot of time, even more time than I did around him. I was certainly around him during the week, some practices and on the weekends, but that was so much fun to be a part of all that.
So let's watch him wind this thing down, because in the end, this was Daryl Dickey ball as we knew it then. Now he's turned into an offensive coordinator that calls a much different game than what he called as a coach here, but it's all about personnel, and it's all about winning with your strengths.
Yeah, and you've got to be able to run the ball in crucial situations. It's one thing if you run it first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, but when you've got the lead, you've got to move the clock, and they know you're going to run the ball, and they still couldn't stop it. That offensive line was terrific. Boy, I just remember that night being so happy for Daryl Dickey and his staff. If you go just a year before, 2 years before, it wasn't that happy a scene around North Texas, but that group got put together over about a 2 or 3 year period, and this may have been their peak that night at the Superdome.
Great memories on ESPN, and a big moment again for the university. We always talk in athletics how if you take athletics seriously, you can be the front porch to the university, and everybody wants a pretty clean, impressive front porch. And I feel like we have that for sure right now. Leadership has ensured that. You look at North Texas with Apogee Stadium, you look at that indoor practice facility, and the statement that's being made. And I know right now in our country, sports have taken a huge backseat, which they're going to for a while. But when they do come back, North Texas is in a place where they can continue to move the needle. And I don't think any of that could ever have been possible without the team we just watched.
Absolutely. I second that. And yes, where they were in the early aughts, I think that showed the possibility of athletics and football, that you could generate that kind of excitement in Denton with a team that won the conference, and fans who would travel and being on national TV. Apogee Stadium does not happen without the work of that 2002 team and all those teams that are leading up to that moment when North Texas got into Conference USA, and then the facilities and the investment that's been made now over the last 5 years. But I think that year in particular, it made it seem possible. This is what can happen when you start winning football games, and they won a lot of games that year.
So we have together broadcast 2 of the 3 winning bowl games. I'm very hopeful and confident that Dave and I will get a chance to do that in the very near future. Some people think you and I were actually at the Salad Bowl in '48, but that's not true.
No.
We were never there to see Zeke Martin overthrow Joe Abbey, so we need to set that straight.
No, we heard plenty about those teams, the Optimus Bowl, the Salad Bowl, and the Sun Bowl in '59. Abner's team, but no, we were not there for that. We do have linkage to that past. I do believe Bill Mercer called that '59 Sun Bowl. I think he was on the call in that game. But yeah, I still got the windbreaker. It still looks relatively new, doesn't it? 18 years later.
Yeah, I've kept all my vintage stuff in safe quarters, to make sure we can celebrate like this. Hey, it wouldn't be the 2002 New Orleans Bowl recap without George Dunham. Thank you for your time. And again, we listen to you every morning. Everybody in the Metroplex does, but I know it's the same situation for you and your family. So everyone stay safe and healthy.
Yes, y'all stay safe too. Mean Green Country. And that was fun, Hank. Thanks for reaching out. It was good. It was kind of like we called a game again together. That was a lot of fun.
Well, maybe we'll do it again as long as this is well received, and who knows, it may or may not be. But we'll let Zach Powell edit it up, and then maybe a 2013 Heart of Dallas Bowl revisit could be in the offing. Who knows?
I'm all for it. I am all for it. And I've got plenty of time in the afternoon. So, yeah, give me a call.
All right. Well, for George Dunham and our producer engineer, Zach Powell, this is Hank Dickenson from Hank's Back Porch saying, thanks for being with us as we went down the corridor of years, remembering the joys and the tears here from Mean Green Sports Productions. Y'all take care, but don't ever forget, we used to own this thing.